It was April 1960. He walked into RCA Studio B in Nashville. This was a familiar place, a safe place. But he was not the same man who had left it. The world was not the same. He had been away for 2 years. 2 years in the army. 2 years in Germany. 2 years of discipline and distance. He came back a different person. His mother was gone. The raw, wild energy of the 1950s was gone. The first wave of rock and roll had crashed and receded. Little Richard found God, Jerry Lee Lewis found Scandal, Buddy Holly found a frozen field in Iowa. And the charts were now filled with clean-cut boys: Fabian, Frankie Avalon, Bobby Rydell. Polished, safe, predictable. And now he was back, the king. But what was a king without his kingdom? The world was watching. RCA was watching. His manager, the Colonel, was watching. They all had a question hanging in the air. Can he still do it? Is he still relevant? Or is he a relic from a time that's already passed? He was 25 years old, and people were wondering if he was already a museum piece. The pressure was immense. His first sessions back were for the album that would become Elvis is Back. It was a declaration, a statement of intent. He had to prove he was more than just the pelvis. More than the sneer. He had to prove he was a musician, an artist, and he came prepared. He had soaked up music his whole life. Blues, gospel, country, opera. He heard it all in his head. In Germany, he'd listened to new sounds, expanding his palette. He wasn't the kid who sang Hound Dog anymore. He was a man. He wanted to make music for grown-ups. The studio was his sanctuary. Here, the Colonel's cigars and contracts couldn't touch the music itself. Here, it was just him and the band. What a band. The Nashville A-Team. The best session musicians in the world. Bob Moore on bass, Hank Garland on guitar, Buddy Harman on drums, Floyd Kramer on piano. These weren't rock and rollers. They were master craftsmen. They could play anything you put in front of them. And they were used to a certain way of working. Professional. Efficient. You come in, you read the chart, you play your part, you collect your check. But he worked differently. He worked on feel, on instinct. He would live inside a song, walk around in it, until he found its heart. He would do take after take, not because of wrong notes, but because the mood wasn't right. The vibe was off. He was chasing a ghost. A feeling. So they gather for a particular song. It's a late-night song, a cool song. It isn't a loud rocker, it doesn't have a big beat. It's sparse, stripped down, it breathes. The main instrument isn't a guitar. It's a stand-up bass walking a slinky, suggestive line, and finger snaps. That's it. Bass and finger snaps. It's a canvas of near silence. His voice would have to do all the work. It would have to paint the entire picture. The lyrics are about heat, a rising temperature. A quiet, burning intensity. It's a song about suggestion, not statement. It's what you don't say that matters. It's the space between the notes. It's a whisper in a dark room. They run through it a few times. It's good. The musicians are perfect. His voice is perfect. But something is wrong. The feeling isn't there. It sounds like professionals in a well-lit room recording a song. It doesn't sound like the song is supposed to feel. It sounds clean. Too clean. Too bright. He stops. He's the boss in the studio. Everyone knows that. He might be a 25-year-old kid to the Nashville veterans, but he's the one whose name is on the record. He has the final say. He looks over at the engineers in the control booth behind the big glass window. He tells them what he wants. Turn off the lights. Silence. The musicians look at each other. The engineers are confused. Turn them off? All of them? This wasn't standard procedure. You needed light to see your instruments, to read your charts, to see the conductor's cues. A recording studio is a workplace. It needs to be lit like one. It's a technical environment. It's not a nightclub. But the demand was serious. He wasn't asking. He was telling. He needed it dark. Not just dim. Pitch black. The only light would be the faint glow from the vacuum tubes on the amplifiers and the small lights on the recording console in the other room. So they did it. The big, bright overhead fluorescent lights blinked off. The room plunged into darkness. The world outside the studio vanished. The glass of the control booth became a black mirror. The other musicians became silhouettes. Their instruments became extensions of their bodies, felt rather than seen. The sheet music was now useless, and in that darkness, everything changed. Why? Why did he need this? It wasn't a rock star whim. It wasn't a theatrical gesture for the sake of it. It was a tool. It was a crucial part of his process. He was creating an environment. He was building the world of the song inside the studio so he could live in it for 3 minutes. First, it was about focus. The light is a distraction. When the lights are on, you see everything. You see the guitarist tuning his strings, you see the drummer fidgeting, you see the engineer on the other side of the glass checking his watch or drinking his coffee. You're aware that you are in a room making a record, you're aware of the process. You are at work. But he didn't want to be at work. He wanted to be inside the song. The darkness erases all of that. It eliminates the visual noise. The world shrinks to only what you can hear. The steady thrum of the bass, the sharp, dry click of fingers snapping, and the sound of his own breath, his own voice coming back at him in his headphones. There was nothing else to see. There was only the sound. It forced a deep, primal kind of listening. For him and for the band. They couldn't rely on visual cues anymore. They had to listen to each other. They had to feel the rhythm together in the dark. It became a shared, secret experience. Second, it was about intimacy. This particular song is incredibly intimate. It's a confession. It's a secret being told to one other person. It's not a song to be shouted from a stage. It's a song to be murmured into someone's ear. How do you fake that feeling in a bright, sterile recording studio, surrounded by your coworkers? You can't, or at least, he couldn't. The darkness creates a bubble of privacy. The microphone is no longer a piece of recording equipment. It becomes the ear of the listener. In the blackness, he could close his eyes and imagine he was singing to just one person. The performance was no longer for a mass audience, for the record-buying public, for the radio. It was for an audience of one. It became personal, he could be vulnerable, he could be subtle, he could use the quiet parts of his voice, the breathy textures, without feeling self-conscious. The darkness gave him permission to be intimate. It shielded him from the eyes of the world, so he could deliver a performance that felt like it was for your ears only. Third, and most important, it was about the vibe. The mood. This is the intangible thing that separates a good record from a legendary one. The song is cool. It's sophisticated. It's jazz. It's the feeling of a smoky room at 2 a.m. long after the party has died down. The air is thick, the conversations are low, the only thing moving is the bass player's fingers and the ice melting in a glass. So you can't manufacture that vibe under fluorescent lights. You just can't. The bright lights say daytime, work, efficiency. The darkness says nighttime, secrets, seduction. He understood this on a gut level. He wasn't just performing the song, he was method acting it. He was building the set in his mind, and the first step was to turn off the sun. He needed to feel the cool of the night. He needed to be in that smoky room. The darkness was his stage lighting. It was his costume. It was the essential ingredient that allowed him to slip into the character the song demanded. It was also about control. For 2 years in the army, he had no control. He was told when to wake up, what to wear, where to go. His life was not his own. Coming back, he was a superstar, but he was still a product, carefully managed by the colonel. The studio was one of the few places where he was the undisputed master. He was in charge of the art. This demand, the seemingly strange request, was an assertion of his artistic authority. Like, it was him saying, I know what this song needs, and we are going to do it my way. It wasn't about ego. It was about serving the music. He knew with an artist's certainty that the performance he wanted, the one he could hear in his head, could only be born in the dark. So there they were, the Nashville A-Team, the greatest session players on earth, playing in the dark, no sheet music, just feel. Bob Moore, the bassist, said later that he had to be careful not to run into anyone. He just locked into the groove. He focused on the feel of the strings under his fingers, the pulse of the song. Everyone had to trust their ears and trust each other. And then he started to sing. And the voice that came out of the darkness was different. It wasn't the frantic, high-energy shout of his 50s hits. It was a controlled, simmering purr. It was confident, it was playful, it was dangerous. He played with the phrasing, stretching some words, clipping others. He used his breath as an instrument. You could hear him smiling on certain lines. You can hear the coolness, the absolute command of the material. The take they got in the dark was magic. It was the one. It had the vibe. It had the intimacy. It had the focus. It was perfect. When the lights came back on, the spell was broken. They were just musicians in a room again, but they had captured something in that darkness. And they had bottled a little bit of the night. This story isn't just a quirky piece of trivia. It tells you everything you need to know about him as an artist. He wasn't just a voice or a handsome face or a cultural phenomenon. He was a master record maker. He understood the studio as an instrument. He knew that the environment you record in is as important as the notes you play. He knew that a great record is more than just a correct performance. It's a captured moment of genuine feeling. And he was willing to do whatever it took, no matter how unconventional, to create that feeling. He was proving to himself and to the world that he had grown. The kid who shook the world with his hips was now a man who could command a room with a whisper. He could create an entire atmosphere just by asking someone to flick a switch. He could take a song, strip it down to its bare essentials, and rebuild it in a new image. His image. Cool, confident, timeless. When you listen to the recording now, you can still feel the darkness it was made in. It doesn't sound like it was recorded in Nashville in 1960. It sounds like it's happening right now, in your room with the lights down low. The basement is like a heartbeat. The finger snaps are like a secret code, and his voice is right there in your ear. It's an intimate private performance shared across the decades. That's the power of what he did. That's the magic he was chasing. He didn't need the lights. He knew exactly where he was going. He was following the sound, he's following the feeling. The darkness was just a path that led him get there. It was a simple request, but it was a choice that made the record immortal. It ensured the song would feel as cool, as sultry, and as immediate 60 years later as it did on the night it was created. A moment of pure instinct from a true artist, working at the peak of his powers, alone in the dark. The song, of course, was Fever.